Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tune. Today we are going to be finishing up on the blue Civic here that we're doing a turbo kit on, and just figured I'd bring you guys along for the ride today. We are going to be doing the oil drain line in the oil pan. I already marked the spot on the pan and removed it from the car, but here she is. I have the hole drilled in between two of the bolt holes here so we can still run all the pan bolts. A lot of guys make the mistake of putting the bung, directly below a bolt, and then you can't run the bolt. Or the bolt's a real pain in the neck to, get tightened down. So anyways, what I did is I actually went to the race shop local here, and I got a 10AN fuel cell bulkhead, or fuel bulkhead. So this comes with the 10AN fitting here. It comes with these two washers to help seal on each side, and then a nut. So pretty much what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this fitting with one of these washers here, just like so. We're going to thread it into the hole. Yes, I drilled the hole so this threads in. So this is going to thread all the way down with some RTV on the threads, and we're going to have the washers sandwiching with this nut on the other side. So the nut's going to go on this side with a washer, and then it's going to be RTV'd on the threads as well. So we're going to have a leak-free, we're going to have a couple ways of sealing here. The RTV on the threads themselves, and the washers. So everybody knows a leaking drain line is annoying, and they're kind of a pain in the neck to fix. So just do it right the first time, and shouldn't have any issues. So like I said, I got the pan off and I got it all cleaned out here. There wasn't really any metal in the pan, so that's a good sign. And I did peek up into the motor a little bit to kind of see what this thing's got going on. And it does have stock connecting rods in it, so that's just something to note going forward. When we tune it, to know how much jam we're gonna give it. We're not gonna really give this thing a whole lot, but we're gonna make it fun street car. So I'm gonna finish up on the pan here, get it reinstalled, and then I'll pick up with you guys in a minute. Alrighty guys, I got the oil pan back installed onto the car here, and I got the fitting coming out of here. This is the fittings that are supplied with that kit. They're just 10AN. They give you two 45s and one straight. So yeah, I just got that installed onto here, just kind of mocking stuff. And then I have this end, I already put the 45 on it because I knew off the turbo would need a 45. And then I RTV'd the pipe thread fitting into the flange. I always RTV, I don't use thread tape. I like to use RTV on the threads. It seems to work a little better for me. And like I said, I already got this end all together and installed. But this end, I have to cut to length. So I just taped off where I need to cut. And I'm gonna cut this with a bolt cutter. That's how I like to cut AN hose, is I have just like a cheap Harbor Freight bolt cutter here. And that's how I cut my AN hose. A lot of people use like a cutoff wheel, which works too, but I've noticed with the bolt cutter I get less fraying and less like material flying all over the place with the bolt cutter. So that's what I like to do. I'm gonna cut this guy, get this flange or this AN fitting installed onto the hose, and then I'll pick back up when the drain line is all done. And by the way, this is the downpipe now that it's installed. Now that I have the oil pan back on, this one bolt right here on the bottom is a little tricky. I had to grind the head on it a little bit to get it to fit. But a lot of times when you don't put all the bolts in on these 5-bolt downpipes, they leak exhaust out of the bolt hole. So I like to get all the bolts in. Got all 5 installed, brand new. There we go. I'm gonna get this hose done. Alright guys, next I'm just kind of draining the transmission fluid here, and we're gonna swap it out with some new Pennzoil Synchro Mesh. That's what I like to run in these manual transmissions. He said that he replaced the clutch and then it started grinding in the 3rd gear, so I don't know if it was just maybe low or what kind of fluid this is, because it looks like water. I don't know. So we're gonna try to maybe replace the fluid, and yeah. But anyways, I'll give you an update on the intercooler piping here. We got the oil return line done. So there's our return line. It is going downhill the whole time. It's not going uphill. That's what you want. You want it to gravity feed into the pan, which down here, there's that. And then I got the intercooler piping installed off of the turbo. I got all the compressor bolts and turbine bolts and all that tight now. So I have the intercooler piping installed here. It is a little bit shitty because the way that the return line is, the pipe has to hang a little bit low, but not bad. So that was the only way I could make the return line and the intercooler piping like work together. So there's that. Exhaust is already installed. I told you guys that. All the intercooler piping is now installed. And then I even kept his little inner fender well here. Ran that pipe there. And then it goes up. And another thing I did not mention is this downpipe is a pretty nice downpipe. It's like 2.5 or 3 inch. I believe it's actually 3 inch downpipe. The rest of this exhaust, not so much. Exhaust on this thing is like, this is a factory section right here. And then it has like a 2 1/4 section here, then down to 2 inch, 2 1/4. And then out at the tailpipe, it has another section of like stock 2 inch pipe. So then it goes out to a can, which would be cool to have full exhaust, but with the power we're trying to make, it's best to have a better flowing exhaust, 2.5 or 3 inch, because the more back pressure you cause, the less power you make. So the smaller the exhaust piping, the less power the car is going to make, and the more stress it's going to put on the motor. It's funny, cars make more power when they're more efficient. They're more reliable when they're more efficient, etc. So I'm going to get the figure out what we're going to do now. Get the tranny fluid situation done. Might get the bumper back on and do a dump tube of some sort. I'll probably just run it straight down and blow it like in this area. Yeah, pretty happy so far. All right, guys, so been working on the car for a while and got almost all of it done. A couple other little things that I did end up doing was I had to reseal the wastegate because the wastegate was not sealing all the way. It was actually leaking around the fire ring, so I put some red RTV, just a little dab in there, to seal that little exhaust leak. I also installed some heat foil. This stuff you can get at O'Reilly's or AutoZone, just to kind of help with the oil line going through the runners there. I wanted to have just another layer of protection, even though this is a stainless braided line. I didn't want that to rub through or melt the oil line, because that is a fire hazard. So made sure that we did double protection on that. Don't be silly, wrap your oil line. I also installed a set of BKR7E spark plugs, and got those all gapped, ready to go. I gapped them at like 20 thousandths right out of the gate, so we don't have to mess with it later. I don't know what else I got done. I did get the bumper installed onto the car, and we also ran a hose from the valve cover just down to the ground. They had this set up running through a non-vented catch can. So this is the catch can that was on the car, and there is no vent on it anywhere. So yeah, that's not going to work for a turbo. You shouldn't even run this really. I mean, this is just a water oil separator. I think it's not even really a catch can or a breather for that matter. So these B20 motors don't really have a lot of ventilation, so you got to at least get something out of it, out of the valve cover. This thing would probably benefit a little bit from a catch can just coming off the valve cover, welding some bungs on, or maybe getting the ones on the back of the block. But I think it'll be all right for low boost and just a little street car setup for this guy. Yeah, I got the wastegate vacuum line plumbed here with this hose that was with the kit, and I adapted it with some of the hose from that catch can there, and I had a little adapter to go from the big hose that comes off the center of the intake manifold here, and I just adapted it down to a smaller one. And then I teed into the fuel pressure regulator for the blow-off valve, so we ran that vacuum line down to the blow-off. And then we also put an O2 sensor in the downpipe to run the wideband, and I have all the wideband wiring and stuff running through down underneath the main wiring harness. And then the boost gauge, I also am putting in a boost gauge for the guy. The boost gauge is just coming off the back of the manifold here. Normally there's like an evap solenoid or something that goes on that back nipple. So I just pulled that off, and I ran the boost gauge line right off of that. That's what I usually do, and it works out great. So this thing is almost ready to hit the dyno. The only other things that I'm doing is I am putting the gauges in the car and getting them wired in and installed. He's got one of the pillars that, you know, you can have 2 gauges right in the gauge cluster there, which is really cool. But I also got the bumper installed onto the car. She is looking great. Everything's fitting good. I did have to remove the fog lights just because the brackets for the fog lights were too big. They were hitting the intercooler pipe right here. So I did remove the fog lights and I put them in the back seat for the guy. If he wants to put different style fog lights in that may fit better, the ones that are there just don't fit. So it is what it is. But everything is looking good, guys. Probably gonna dyno this thing, see how it's doing, and then later on we can add a dump tube, or he can get a dump tube. I know they make the ones for this kit. I'm surprised it didn't come with it. They're just like a 90 turn down. That's what a lot of guys run. And we are going to run open exhaust, and he's going to put exhaust on it later, you know, later on. So I don't want to tune it with a choked up exhaust, because if you open it up later, if you open the exhaust up later, like put a bigger exhaust on it, the tune will change. But if we have it tuned up with the open exhaust and he were to put an exhaust on later, it shouldn't change much. So just trying to save people money and do the best job we can. Alrighty guys, the car is ready to hit the dyno now, and yeah, I actually put an air filter on it because, well, the kit came with, it's like a weird little 45 with a PCV hose nipple on it. A lot of these eBay kits come with them. Sorry, I got a mess going on right now. Comes with this pipe to use as the intake off the turbo, which this has 2 issues. It's too small diameter to run onto the 3-inch outlet of the turbo, and 2, it just does not fit. Like, there's no way you could make this fit unless you cut it all to shit. So what I did is I improvised, and I just used some stuff that I had laying around, and I just put a 3-inch 90-degree silicone coupler here, and then adapted a piece of pipe inside of here to put this filter on. It's really the only option that we have at the moment with the time I have with the car. So we could have maybe just put another 90 here and then ran the filter like up top, but then it would cover the blow-off valve. Yeah, I think it's good this way. Like I said, this is just a simple little street car that we're doing. This isn't like a big power race car or anything like that. It's just gonna be a fun street car. So anyways, I did get a dump tube welded on. This flange came with the kit, but I had to source piping and weld it on. So I did that as well. Weld turned out pretty decent, I don't know, for a MIG welder. And I think the last thing I did was I got the gauges installed, and they are looking awesome. Let me get get a light here to show you. I love these EK setups where the gauges fit in the cluster here. So that's really nice. Everything works good. I'll turn them on for you so you can see. So the gauges light up nice, everything's working. And all the wiring is tucked away. You can't see any of the wiring. Yeah, it's good to go. I just tapped into the fuse box for power, and then I shared the ground for both gauges, and I ran them into a ground that is like over in this area by the kick panel. Behind the kick panel, I should say, there's a ground spot with a bolt that there's a bunch of other grounds I go to. I just took the bolt out, put a ring terminal on them, and then bolted it up through in there. So that's it. I'm gonna get this thing strapped down. Depending on how long the video is here, the dyno tuning process might be separate. I might go live, I don't know. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed us putting this little Honda Civic together with the Rev9 eBay turbo kit. It should be a blast to drive, and stay tuned for the dyno results and maybe some street pulls. So have a great night and a better tomorrow.